morning light stretched across my kitchen table, pale and thin, the kind of light that made everything look more fragile than it was. I had set down a torn sheet of paper and written 3 words in my careful block letters: bread, detergent, bank. The list was nothing special, yet the word bank seemed heavier than the rest. I read it twice, as though repetition might ease the knot in my stomach. The knock on the door came earlier than I expected. When I opened it, my father, Gerald, stood there with his broad smile, the same one he had used for decades whenever he wanted something to seem harmless. He carried no groceries, no morning paper, just that smile and an energy that felt too fast. Behind him, Elaine followed, holding a slim leather folder against her chest like a shield. "Clara," my father said, stepping in before I invited him, "we thought we'd catch you before your errands." Perfect timing. His voice was brisk, coated with warmth, but edged with something else I could not ignore. Elaine's eyes swept over the counters, the mail stacked near the sink, the half-empty cup of tea I had not yet finished. "It's a good day to get everything sorted," she added, her hand tightening on the folder. I folded the list and slipped it into my pocket. My heart tapped faster, but I kept my face still. Routine, I told myself. Just act as if it were any other morning. I moved to the cupboard for my sweater, buying myself a moment. Inside the bedroom, my hand brushed the small envelope I had hidden days ago. I slipped it into my purse and returned to the kitchen, where my father was already reaching for my car keys. My father set the leather folder on the table as if it belonged there. He tapped the cover with 2 fingers, the sound too loud in the quiet room. "It's nothing complicated, Clara," he said. "Just a few signatures to streamline the accounts. Keeps the bank from calling you with questions. You'll thank me later." Elaine pulled out a chair and sat close, the folder pressed between us. Her perfume drifted sharp and sweet, making the air feel smaller. She placed her hand lightly on my elbow, but her grip tightened until the bone ached. She didn't look at me. She looked at my father as if waiting for her cue. I smiled thinly, though my chest tightened. These were old tactics. After my mother's funeral, I'd seen them unfold again and again, my father arranging the estate, helping me manage bills I could have handled myself, speaking to bankers on my behalf while I stood silent at his side. He had convinced me then that he was protecting me. I was older now, but the pressure carried the same weight. "I'll need a minute before we leave," I said, pushing back my chair. Elaine's fingers released, leaving a faint throb in my arm. My father's smile didn't falter, but his eyes followed me down the hall. In the bedroom, I opened the drawer of my nightstand. Beneath folded scarves lay the envelope I had prepared. Plain, sealed, my handwriting across the front 4 words. I held it for a second, steadying my breath. My plan was small, but it was mine. I slid it into my purse, next to my wallet and ID, and closed the drawer without a sound. When I returned, my father was already standing by the door, car keys in hand, his smile still polished, as though nothing had been decided yet. The morning air was sharp as we stepped outside, and my father jingled the car keys like it was his right to hold them. "I'll drive," he said, opening the door before I could protest. I slid into the back seat, purse clutched tight against me. Elaine took the passenger seat, the folder never leaving her grip. As we pulled onto the narrow street, my father filled the silence with the kind of talk that was meant to sound harmless. "The hardware store's running a sale this week. Good deals on ladders, and the weather's turning early. Feels like fall already." He spoke with that tone he used on Neighbors, the one that disguised command as friendliness. I watched the houses pass, porches draped with late summer flowers, the sidewalks damp from sprinklers. Each turn brought us closer to Congress Street, closer to the bank. My fingers tapped against the strap of my purse. I told myself to breathe slowly. Elaine shifted in her seat and opened the folder on her lap. She angled it so I could see. "These are the forms," she said lightly. "Nothing complicated. They just keep everything in one place. Less stress for you. She tapped a line with her manicured finger. Initial here. It just means they can talk to me if they need anything. My eyes followed her hand. At the top of the page, the words were printed in heavy black letters, Power of Attorney. The phrase seemed to thicken the air around me. I didn't point to it. I didn't argue. I let the folder stay open a moment longer before I looked away. My father glanced at me through the rear-view mirror, his eyes catching mine. You taught me that family takes care of each other, he said. His voice was almost soft, but the words pressed down with weight. I turned my gaze to the line of storefronts coming into view, their windows bright in the morning sun. The corner of the bank appeared just beyond, its glass front reflecting the sky. My father's hand tightened on the wheel as he steered us into the lot. The parking lot was half full, the kind of weekday morning bustle I had expected. My father parked close to the entrance and stepped out quickly, circling the car before I even reached for the handle. He pulled my door open with exaggerated care. Careful, he said, as if I were fragile, as if his hand hadn't just steered me here. The glass doors of the River Street branch glinted with a reflection of sky. Inside, the air was cooler, scented faintly of coffee and polished floors. People moved quietly between counters, faces bent toward their errands. I walked between my father and Elaine, their presence pressing me inward like walls. At the teller line, a young woman with kind eyes glanced up. Her name tag read Maya. Her smile faltered just slightly when her gaze landed on the faint bruise along my forearm, the one Elaine's grip had left behind days ago. In that pause, I felt seen, if only for a heartbeat, before her expression smoothed back into professional calm. My father guided me toward a low table in the waiting area, setting the leather folder down with purpose. He slipped a pen into my hand before I had even sat. His voice dropped low. The cheer gone. Just sign, Clara. It's routine. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Elaine sat close, closer than comfort allowed. Her hand returned to my elbow, the pressure sharper now, her perfume filling the air between us. She leaned in, whispering words only I could hear. One signature and it's done. Don't fight it. I looked at the pen resting against my fingers. Nights of planning flickered through my mind, the envelope in my purse, the quiet rehearsals of what I would do when the moment came. I had told myself over and over not to freeze, not to fold. I lifted my eyes from the table to the far wall, steadying my breath. I counted slowly in my head, the way I had practiced 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My pulse eased, my grip loosened, and the fear that threatened to hollow me out began to recede. Across the lobby, a door clicked open, and the branch manager stepped forward. Julia Brooks appeared in the lobby with the quiet authority of someone who had walked this floor for years. Her navy jacket was neat, her badge clipped straight. She smiled warmly, addressing my father first, then letting her eyes settle on me a second longer than courtesy required. Why don't we bring these papers to a desk, she suggested. It's always easier to review in private. My father nodded quickly, eager to move things forward. Elaine rose beside him, folder tight under her arm. I followed, my purse close to my side, my breath measured. As Julia led us toward her office, she paused briefly at the teller counter. Maya. Could you bring me a water in a few minutes? She asked. The words ordinary, but the glance she gave was not. Maya inclined her head almost imperceptibly. A signal received. Inside the office, Julia gestured toward the chairs. My father pulled one close for me, pressing the pen into my hand again. Go ahead. Clara, he murmured, lowering his voice to what he must have thought sounded kind. It's routine. Elaine sat on my other side, her hand finding my arm once more. Julia settled across from us. Let me just make copies of the documents for our file, she said, holding out her hand. My father hesitated, then placed the folder on the table. As Julia opened it, I reached into my purse, My fingers brushed the smooth envelope, the edges worn from my rehearsals. I pulled it out carefully and slid it beneath my ID and deposit slip as if it were part of the routine stack. "Here are my documents," I said, voice steady, handing them across. Julia accepted them without pause. For a moment, her gaze met mine. Nothing in her expression shifted, yet I felt a thread stretch between us. She rose, sleeve brushing the edge of the folder, and left the office with measured steps. My father leaned closer, whispering, "Almost done now." I kept my eyes fixed on the door Julia had just closed, listening for the faint click of the copier down the hall. The office was small, walled in glass, the door closing with a soft click. A white noise machine hummed faintly from the corner. My father sat across from me, the folder spread open like an invitation and a threat at once. He pushed the pen toward me again. "It's routine, Clara. You're making this bigger than it is." Elaine leaned in from my side, her hand curling around my forearm. Her nails pressed hard enough to blanch the skin. "Don't stall," she whispered. "Just sign." The perfume clung to her, heavy and sharp, choking the air between us. Julia moved with calm efficiency, taking a chair at the corner of the table. She didn't reach for the pen, didn't glance at the forms. Instead, her tone was light, conversational. "Before we begin, let me make copies of everyone's IDs for our file. It's standard for all document reviews." She looked directly at me when she said it. "Miss Henley, may I see yours?" I drew in a breath, slipped my hand into my purse, and felt for the items in their order. My wallet came out first. I placed my driver's license on the table, then laid my deposit slip on top of it, as if it were habit. Last, with a motion rehearsed in countless late-night hours, I slid the plain envelope beneath them. "Here are my documents," I said, my voice steady. My father leaned back, relieved, certain I had yielded. Elaine eased her grip, though her hand still lingered against my arm. Julia gathered the small stack without the slightest hesitation. Her eyes brushed mine for half a second, no shift in expression, no sign to anyone watching. But I felt it, the acknowledgement. She walked to the door and stepped into the hallway. The faint sound of the copier started a moment later. My father exhaled, tapping the pen against the papers as if marking the rhythm of his victory. "See," he said, voice low. "We're almost finished." I kept my gaze fixed on the glass wall, where Julia's figure passed by once, her hand at her side, her expression composed. My pulse steadied, not from surrender but from the knowledge that my note was no longer mine, alone. Julia returned with the folder and a small stack of copies, her movements even, her smile undisturbed. She set everything neatly on the table and folded her hands. "Before we proceed," she said, "we'll need to verify some information with the account holder directly. It's part of our Know Your Customer requirements. For a few minutes, I'll need to speak with Miss Henley alone." My father gave a short laugh, the kind meant to dismiss without asking permission. "She's hard of hearing sometimes. I'll help her through it." Julia didn't waver. "I'll call you right back in. This part is required by regulation." She nodded toward the hallway, her voice still calm, her eyes steady. Elaine's fingers tightened once more on my arm before slipping away. "We'll wait outside," she said brightly, but her glance cut sharp as glass. The door closed behind them, and the office grew still. Julia leaned forward, her tone softer now. "Clara, I read your note." My chest felt tight, but I held her gaze. She continued, voice low and steady. "I need to ask you 3 questions, and you can answer yes or no or explain more if you want. First, are you being pressured to sign documents you don't want to sign?" "Yes," I whispered. "Second, do you understand that these forms would give control of your money and your house to your father and stepmother?" "Yes." "Third, do you feel safe at home with them visiting you?" I looked down at my hands, the pale ridge of my thumbnail catching the light. "No." Julia gave